make your body more fit, use your body more. And it's not fit from like an aesthetic type thing. It's just
Mhm.
like discover how you can get strong, discover how you can become flexible, discover how you can have a lot of mobility, discover how you can move without pain, or discover how you can be quick and agile, and explore those type of things. Because exploring those things also builds your capacity, helps you to know yourself better. And the beautiful thing about having a body, it can go, not only can you go from the cognitive, this is my identity and this is what I think I am and this is how I show up in the world, but it can also go from the body. What you do with your body can inform you of who you are.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and why you think you are who you are?
That's a great question. Why am I who I think I am? So my name's Dominic, and I'm a coach. I focus on self-mastery and inner evolution with my clients. And so typically what that means is I'm always helping people become more and more conscious. So there's something called IQ, which is just like intelligence quotient. There's like the EQ, emotional quotient. Apparently there's different types of intelligences out there, and I'm not really addressing any of those. I'm just talking about consciousness, and by that I mean helping a person know themselves better and better and better. And that's why I say like self mastery goes back even to the Greek saying know thyself.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, the reason that phrase exists and that guidance exists to people through centuries, it's just your life becomes easier and more enjoyable the more that you know yourself. And so I guess going to your other question about like why am I the way I am, I do this. And, I focus on it because I think as they tell entrepreneurs the best thing to do is like solve your own problem.
Right.
And so I've always been like myself, my biggest conundrum. And so along the way of figuring myself out, I noticed along the way things I had learned were really helpful to other people. And at some point I said, well, let me get some training and certification in this. I'm an engineer by background, education.
Mm.
And I did that, but largely I think, in the nature nurture side of it, I think part of it is just on the nurture side. I think I saw some good dynamics between
Mm-hmm.
my parents when I was growing up, that I still am very mindful of, and even share in my own way with clients. And on the nature side, I think we're all born with a certain wiring. And I think my wiring is always seeking out a deeper truth. And I don't think there's anything more truthful or more worthwhile than to figure out like who we are. So I've been working on that myself, and on the path I found other people are interested in the same. So I share with them tips, tools, techniques for knowing themselves better.
I really love that. And I want to speak to, like, I'm all about, people finding their path, their health adventure by being themselves. And a lot of times we say, just be yourself. And sometimes people are like, well, I don't even know who that is.
Right.
because they've had all this outside programming. They've tried to be like other people just to get um, approval from the outside world rather than like looking inward and saying like, who am I? So is there like a specific process or is it different for everybody, helping them find out who they are?
Well, I think it's both. So I mean, I think for everyone there's some uniqueness to it, and then I
Mm,
think there's like the general side of things. So I'd say, for this conversation, probably what I think I can do is address mostly like the general side of things. And if you're interested in some specifics, I can give some examples of that. But in general, like a person gets to know themselves better by, finding every place in their life where there's fear.
mm,
So another way of saying fear is just like their borders, their edges. It's like if someone said like, let's say you got a property, and they said, well, how would you know your property? Well, you would walk your property, and you would find the edges of it, and the edges of your property is like that's where it ends. And so at that point, you say, okay, well, I get to explore within this area, and for a lot of people, that's called like the comfort zone.
mm,
And beyond the edges of the property. Yeah, I guess it could have many names, but the discomfort zone or the growth zone. But this is typically where we really get to know ourselves, because in that discomfort, that fear that we have, we understand where we're hiding things from other people, or we're hiding things from ourselves, or we see where the mask of who we want to present to the world, how we want to be perceived, how it all of a sudden is not sufficient for a particular thing that we're trying to do.
mm,
Um, and then it's an exploration of that, and say like pushing beyond that we get to know ourselves better. Because I would say conceptually we're looking at, say, like a fragmented self versus a whole self. So the whole self doesn't really have edges, and it's just the whole self is open and curious about doing any number of things, and of course aligned with, say, values that the person has. But even that is like, well, where do these values come from? Are these from my parents?
mm,
Are these like religious values? Are these societal? Like, do I believe in these values? Like, do I think there should be other values or better values and stuff? So the general path is finding your edges, uh, and I would say in a gentle way, uh, pressing into discomfort, but not too much. So a lot of times I say this self development, the self mastery is it's very much like working out, and so glad we have this connection here. About like getting in better shape, because
yeah.
it's all about like just reps and consistency and showing up. Like you don't have to show up and say, okay, now I'm going to have like my personal best. I've never squatted 400 pounds, but today I'm going to do it, even though my last squat was like 185 or something. And so it's like, no, don't do that. If it's 185, let's try 205. Or let's try 195. And it's to keep showing up and pressing into that discomfort, and then you get to know yourself more and more. So I would say that, and also just being really curious about everything. So a lot of times people want to make statements, and they'll say, I'm unhappy, or I'm an introvert, or I'm unpopular, or people don't like me. And I would say the part of knowing yourself better is more in the asking questions than making statements. And so instead of saying, I'm unhappy, it's like, how do I feel?
Mm,
Or it's like, why do I feel the way I feel? Like, if I'm unhappy, why am I unhappy? What's the source of that? How long have I been unhappy? Have I always been unhappy? Was there an origin point to this? Were there other people around me, growing up perhaps, that were unhappy? Why were they unhappy? And so it's with that curiosity, as well as the key thing to remove. It's curiosity without judgment.
mm-hmm.
It allows people to just discover things. And in that place of curiosity, we can learn a lot about ourselves because curiosity without judgment, I mean, we just remain perpetually interested in ourselves and what we're capable of and what we can do. And actually we'll tie it back even to like the getting in better shape. I mean, everyone should gift themselves with like knowing their body better and knowing what it can do, going on a hike, maybe that's a little bit longer, exerting yourself in the gym, that's maybe a little bit harder, or picking up some physical skill that you haven't done before, because all of this teaches you about yourself as well. And funnily enough, I would say it, at the very basics, if someone wants to learn about themselves, I'd say just make your body more fit, use your body more. And it's not fit from like an aesthetic type thing. It's just like discover how you can get strong, discover how you can become flexible, discover how you can have a lot of mobility, discover how you can move without pain, or discover how you can be quick and agile, and explore those type of things. Because exploring those things also builds your capacity, helps you to know yourself better. And the beautiful thing about having a body, it can go, not only can you go from the cognitive, this is my identity and this is what I think I am and this is how I show up in the world, but it can also go from the body. What you do with your body can inform you of who you are. A person who can't do a marathon is very different, can't in quotes, right, is very
Right.
different than a person who was fearful of doing a marathon, but they wanted to do it and they joined a running club and they kept at it and they followed the program and then they ran the marathon. I mean, that person knows himself or herself much, much better than the person who just says, I can't do a marathon.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's so much I want to speak to and everything you just said. The first thing I'll speak to is the curiosity without judgment. That has been the biggest concept in my own life in the last
Mm,
2 years or so. And I call it noticing without judging.
yeah.
And to expand on what you're saying, like when you start to when you're curious about yourself and you notice these things about you that maybe you didn't even know that you do, or maybe you didn't even realize that you think all the time, it just brings it into your awareness and then it puts you at choice as to whether or not you still want to continue doing this thing or do something else, right? So
Hmm.
it brings in this aspect of choice. Um, and the other thing I wanted to speak to is getting to know your body, which is kind of it's what I do with my clients. I mean, the people I work with have been stuck in diet culture for years. My own story, I was on a diet for 27 years.
Mm,
And what that does is it's constantly having this outside source telling you what to do with your body. And so there's this mind body disconnection after a while, rather than like paying attention to each individual thing that you eat. How does it make you feel?
hmm.
You know, paying attention to, okay, I'm doing CrossFit 3 times a week, but how does my body feel afterwards?
Right.
Yeah, and so and even like to that point, like CrossFit's hard workout. And so many people think that exercise session or workout, you're supposed to feel beat up and thrashed at the end, and that's like the opposite. You're supposed to feel better and to your point, like what can your body do?
Hmm.
Let's explore that. What can you do with your body? And then that piece kind of helps with the um learning to, I want to say self-love, but not in the, oh my gosh, I love my body. Because like there seems to be this love dislike relationship that people have with themselves, at least the clients that I work with. And figuring out what your body can do, what has your body done for you, and then you can love it that way. Be like, thank you, body, for doing all these things for me.
Hmm.
Hope all of that made sense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm a I'm such a big fan of the body. And my clients typically they're coming to me more for, I'd say, we can say a cognitive, mental, emotional type thing. And not to say that dealing with body stuff isn't, but I, I will want to get into things, very basic, just like how are you eating?
Mhm.
And just tell me, because even like saying were you eating healthily, I've learned that doesn't work. So it's more like tell me what you're eating. And then the other thing, it's like, tell me about your sleep.
Mhm.
Um, in some ways I could say what I do, there's a spiritual nature to it. Not that has to be like a central component of the conversations I have with my clients. But I did enjoy a quote I heard from this guy. I think he was a monk. He said, people that are starving, they don't need spirituality, they need food. And people that are not getting good sleep or not eating well, they don't need self mastery. They need to eat better. You need to get
Yeah.
a good night's sleep. But I consider those like very body based things. And I also feel that if people just got to enjoy their body and what it can do and just like use it, um, like on a mass scale, so much of what we see here, at least in the US, about like, mental illness or depression or anxiety would just go away. It's funny, like, there's so many dogs here that are owned in the US, and nearly every dog owner, they'll say, oh, I gotta take the dog outside, or they just regularly do it, 2 or 3 times a day or something. Or if they have a backyard, great, they'll let the dog out because they know, like, yeah, the dog needs to run. The dog needs to exercise and
Yeah.
stuff. And the dog's not going to the gym; it's just using its body. It's just going out there, chasing the ball, doing whatever. But it's intentionally. I will say the dog's being intentionally being active, or maybe not intentionally. We could say it's just enjoying its physicality. And I
Mhm.
think if we had this mindset more of just enjoying our own physicality, um, it would give off so much big payoff, not only in terms of the physical health, but also as the mental.
Yeah. And the dog too, it's ingrained in the dog to want to move its body,
Hmm.
just like it is in us.
Yeah,
And at some point in our lives, that's squashed down. I mean, it obviously it's so easy to just sit at a computer all day. You have everything you need right here. But what you
yeah,
don't have is movement. Unless you have a treadmill desk. I have a treadmill desk.
yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting. It's kind of like there's this phrase like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Hmm.
and,
Yeah.
and once you see how nearly everything we do is opposite from what would be better for us to do, you can just kind of go through the list of it all. And so, yeah, sitting at a desk, super comfortable, and like having the computer screen like right there. Um, but it's just only if only we're second nature just to be, say outside, like
Mhm.
sunlight, fresh air is so important to be outside the majority of the day. Um, and there's a lot of things that we've accepted, and so I think there's a big difference between what we're doing and just I guess the efficiency of what we're doing, and what would be like optimal for our health. Um, and when I say optimal for our health, I mean I'm at the end of the day, I'm just focused on feelings, believe it or not, and good, feeling
Mhm.
good, feeling peaceful. We can go so far as to feel joyful or happy, but I'm just like feeling good, like in my body. It doesn't hurt to move. I enjoy movement. I enjoy my own strength, my own flexibility, the ability to move without pain. And by peace, I just mean, yeah, whatever's going on, I'm more or less at a place of acceptance with it, not dejection or apathy, just acceptance.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I mean, and the funny thing is, like, the body's always there. And I remind myself sometimes, like, I'm in sunny Miami, and especially this time of year. I have more benefit than most, at least in terms of like warm weather. And I make sure like I go outside at the end of the day, and every day I'm still surprised. It's like I step outdoors, I'm like, this is amazing. And in my
Yeah.
case, it's still warm. The air is flowing, and although Miami could be greener, at least where I'm at, there's like a really good park nearby. I'm able to go ground, put my feet in the earth.
Hmm. I have a confession. When I see a really beautiful sunrise or sunset, I cry.
Yeah. What's behind that? It doesn't sound like it's sadness.
No, it's just I've learned to appreciate the beauty of outside
Yeah.
and like earth and its colors and I don't know, just lately it's a new thing too. Just lately it'll hit me of just how beautiful it is and it makes me cry.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I'll cry.
Yeah. I mean, that response to seeing that, I think is gives justice to what you're witnessing. I mean, we live on a beautiful planet.
Yeah.
I mean, it is quite gorgeous. Um, and so many different parts of it, like different topography and climates, and I mean, so much to enjoy here. Um, I I think we all could like wake up more to like what we're actually witnessing, and just witness it at a deep level, and just have so much gratitude, and just witness like the beauty of it. It's interesting. I have a doctor friend. He works a lot with people's I'll say resetting their autonomic nervous system.
Mm,
So the parasympathetic and sympathetic should be balanced, working as they should. But he says when people do get their nervous systems balanced, and so that usually happens after some healing type thing, somatic exercise, breath work, what have you. Um, he says it's common that they'll see the world just differently. He says they might just see a leaf dropping from a tree, and they might just be moved to tears, kind of like you, by how beautiful it is. He
mm,
recounts when he was at a concert, and someone did a solo performance, and he started crying just hearing her voice. But it was just acknowledging and witnessing and receiving the beauty of it. But his nervous system was fully prepared to bring that in, rather than being like stuck and sympathetic, where a lot of people are in that fight, flight, or freeze. So,
yeah. Do you remember the movie American Beauty with the plastic bag floating around and the guys filming it?
you know, I don't remember that. Like I remember Kevin Spacey, Neighbor Next Door, but I don't remember the bag floating.
Yeah, it just reminded me of that because it's like a breezy day and this bag is just like flying around and he's like, American Beauty.
uh,
I don't know, that just made me think of that.
yeah.
Um, I am curious if you're willing to share, what is your story? Because I assume you haven't always been in the place where you are now. Um, but what's your story? Like, do you have a story where maybe you had a mindset shift or an aha moment or just like an I've had enough of this crap moment where you just completely shifted and changed your life or
I don't know
parts
if
of
I don't know if I had a big one. I've thought about this before, and then in other developments, things I've had, they say, like, write down your story, and I fall in that category sometimes. Well, I don't have a story and stuff, but near as I can tell that I would share that I think might be interesting to your guests is that I'm more the like I kind of did the right things, and so I guess the interesting thing is, so I'll tell the story. Maybe it'll unfold. So I
Okay.
was born in Chicago, born on the South Side, and I think that the best thing I had going is I just had two very loving, very present parents like in the household. So, the South Side of Chicago, it's not known for let's say, gentleness there. And
Yeah.
so definitely grew up in a bit of things where I'd say, needed to take care of myself. And I'd say at a young age, I learned to, I guess, give at least as well as I was receiving from other people. And for those that care for astrology, I'm Aries, so fire sign. That kind of just worked. Yeah, yeah. Um, so fast forward. Got great education. I went to Stanford undergrad. That's what engineering was. Worked for Motorola for a while, semiconductor manufacturing facility. Worked in consulting. This was after I got an MBA at Wharton. I'm only mentioning the schools because they're well known, and I think it's part of the story in the sense of it's not something you would say is typical from some guy who's like born on the south side of Chicago. And so whatever was going on, things were going along right, but I attribute that to really just like the parents. And this is what I mean. It's like, this is my story, things are going well. But I think where things changed and like why I got to what I'm doing now is eventually I got to like a manager position. And it was probably the first time in my life where I ran into some difficulty at work where I said, this is not going well, or I'm not performing the way I want to, because it was the first time I needed to get stuff done through other people rather than me just doing it myself. And my experience was I was appalled. I was appalled because I'm like, why aren't you just doing this? This is the work. Like, get it done. And so I discovered things such as like people won't do things just because you tell them to do. Or people will have feelings about certain things and they want to talk about it and stuff. So I think the best I can say is like I've learned a bit of emotional intelligence. And I'd say that was very much embodied by me. Actually, I say it's more tactical and strategic at first. I started asking people things like, how was your weekend? How are things with your children and stuff? So I was asking more because I just wanted to build like rapport. And I said, apparently people really appreciate emotional connection to really feel motivated, like to do like work and stuff. But I'd say very quickly it went from strategic and tactical to, it was like I did take an interest in what was going on. But what I also noticed is that the better people felt about themselves and the more I could contribute to them feeling better about themselves, like the better they performed at work. So, good outcome for me. I started like performing well as a manager, but along the way, I also got, I'd say, a couple of key inputs. So one of the inputs, like a good friend of mine said, hey, you should be a coach. And I was like, yeah, okay. And so I just like completely ignored it. And she was kind enough, I think 3 months later, to come by and kind of grab me by the shoulders. And she said, hey, you have to understand, when I say you should be a coach, it's coming from the perspective, like I've paid for coaching. She goes, I'm very successful. I'm a VP at a bank. And I pay for coaching, and I pay for like Tony Robbins, like coaching and stuff. And you're really good, and you're not even trying. Like this, these are just casual conversations we're having, and it's like, like your insight is like spot on. So I said, oh, okay, well, let me look into this thing. And so I got a certification in that, and then other certifications. But another thing was one of my people on my team, she had grabbed my boss when we were all together, and she made it a point to say to her how helpful I had been in some personal things that had gone on in her life. And I didn't realize the depth of it. I did know at some point, just in our interactions, I said, I'm intentionally going to build a much deeper rapport with her because like something's just telling me she just needs more support here.
Mm.
And it turned out she did. Um, and I think with that, it just helped me realize kind of some like fundamental things. And it's so, in some ways, it's so trite, but I think the emphasis I got was, it's funny. I'm pausing when I'm saying it because like you've heard it, and everyone's heard it already, but it's to love yourself. And the thing is, the nuance I got was like, I always thought this is what everyone was doing.
Mm.
Like it never occurred to me that people were going through life like not loving themselves and stuff. And like I said, the way I grew up, I really wasn't taking much interest in a world of people. I was like, if we get along, we get along. If you're gonna create some upset in my life, I'm gonna go through you. If you don't get the idea, like to leave me alone and stuff. So, but I was just kind of in my own world of doing things. And so when I got the input from my coworker and input from my friend, I said, well, all I'm doing is just really just appreciating myself, at its core.
Yeah.
And because, I realized like, well, no life is going to work out if you don't like yourself. I mean, we'll come down a little notches. Like we don't even have to talk about self-love. Let's just do you like yourself? And what I witnessed is that most people don't. And I says like, okay. Yeah, well, this is a thing. Like I can help people with that. And at the very least help them focus their attention on the most important piece. It's kind of like if you're looking for leverage or something, like there's all these different things that you can do. Like what's the number one thing you could do in your life to, like that would be the most transformational is just increase your like for yourself, increase your self-acceptance. And like the more you can amp that up to like a super high level, it's just the more everything is just going to fall into alignment. You'll automatically start doing things that will be better. And so, so I would say that's my story, this big revelation that, I would say I don't know, as a race, as a species, like we're just doing it wrong. Like
Yeah.
our focus, the intention is entirely in the wrong place. And, from my background, I really just think in terms of things like systems and processes. It's like there's like an infinite number of ways for things to work out poorly, but there's a much smaller subset of how things are going to work out well. And when it comes to the individual, the self, and I don't say things like always or never, like easily, but like it will never work out well. It will never work out well if the person cannot develop like a very, very deep appreciation for themselves. And so to me, that's part of that self mastery. That's part of like, that inner evolution. You've got to have that top tier relationship with yourself. And I will also admit to, I've come to learn it's not necessarily easy. And definitely depending on the background, but it's like a skill to develop. And so like people can learn how to swim. People can learn how to do calisthenics. People can learn how to like themselves more. It is a bit of a habit. It's almost like it can be akin to like meditation. It's like, does everyone know how to meditate? No. Can everyone learn how to meditate better? Yes. And so that's on the whole self-like, self-love, self-acceptance. Yeah. So I submit this as my story.
I'll take notes. No, but like, yeah, the self-like piece, I think it's especially, I mean, it's true for everyone, but I think especially coaches need this kind of, the word that came to me was training, but like you said, it's just a skill that we can master, and we need that for ourselves because we're constantly, as coaches, we're trying to help other people.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to help other people if we're not even helping ourselves. And
Yeah.
so, I always say coaches need coaches. Like I have a coach. Do
Yeah.
you?
I've coached.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I have
so,
several coaches.
yeah, I do too. Yeah, for different
Yeah.
aspects of my life. But yeah, I think that's big is like, and it's not to say that you can't be loved unless you love yourself, but it is hard to help other people if you haven't helped yourself first. So,
Yeah. I mean, so much of that piece, it's like, there's a phrase you can't give from an empty cup.
right.
And so that's, it's funny. That's actually where a lot of coaches, I think, start out. It's like they want to help everyone so much that they're just giving, 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 and they haven't really like taken care of themselves.
Hmm.
And I think one place where a coach will turn the corner is when he or she just says, "Hey, I really need to take care of like myself first." And again, sometimes an an obvious truth to one is not an obvious truth to like another.
Hmm.
And so I think that's one piece on the coaching side. But then when it comes to just witnessing like people in general, because everyone's trying to do something, right? They're trying to have more health, they're trying to have a better relationship, they're trying to like make more money.
Mm.
Um, and so in many ways, it kind of doesn't matter what people want. They just need more information. They need more clarity and like how to get it. Um, the type of clients that I typically work with, they're somewhat like me in the sense of, they've gone to the good schools, they've gotten the good jobs, they have the high compensation. So it's not like they're looking for better jobs or more money typically,
Mm.
but they are looking for more peace and fulfillment. And it pry open the the doors a little bit. A lot of what's driving that achievement is insecurity. And what's behind insecurity is a lack of faith or a lack of acceptance of self. And so it's like how I will be all these things, I will have all these things because when I get them or having them will make it finally so I can like myself. And it's just a game that one can never win. Um, it's witness, and we'll see it from time to time. At least 2 to 3 times a year is probably more frequent. Like we'll see someone who's in the media, like a celebrity or something. They'll have some type of big blow up. They'll check into rehab, or like they'll have to have an overdose or something. And this is happening way more than that. But this is what hits our popular media a lot of times. And it's like the missing ingredient was like they weren't taking care of themselves, and the reason they weren't taking care of themselves is like they didn't like themselves. And kind of like the reason they didn't like themselves is like that's a whole other thing about typically it's some early experience where they never got that conditioning, because we're all brainwashed from a young age, but we can be brainwashed for great things, for like achievement, or
Hmm.
for success, or for like wealth or things, or entrepreneurship. But we can also be brainwashed for like not liking ourselves, not appreciating ourselves, not thinking like we're good enough. And
Hmm.
so we can uh, accrue a number of things that we think will take care of that, but they never do.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of my clients chased the number on the scale, thinking once the number is this, then I will feel this way. And I try to get them to a point where they can feel like that now,
Yeah,
whether or not the scale says this number. And that's a journey I went through too. Like
yeah,
I at my at the peak of my disordered eating and exercise, I hated my body and I hated myself, you know? And
hmm,
so, but I thought that once I got to that size and that number on the scale, that, I'd be happy and people would love me and blah, blah,
yeah,
blah. And nope, body dysmorphia at its peak.
yeah,
And I laugh, but I mean, that's just the way it goes, is like we think that once we do this thing, then we can feel this. And it's like, no, you can feel that right now.
yeah. Well, I get to laugh along with you because I had the same experience. I was very overweight, like as a kid. And at some point, like I lost it. And, on the way I said, oh, my life's going to change. My life's going to change. And like, so, I got to the decent weight and I was like, my life hasn't changed.
Yeah.
The clothes fit different. That was like the biggest difference. I had to get new clothes.
Mhm.
But when it came to like how I felt about myself, I still felt like largely the same. So, and that was a, I would say, big aha moment. I said, oh well, and I didn't have the realization then. I said, well, I guess if I want to feel differently, it's going to have to be something else, and it's not this weight
Yeah.
loss. Yeah. Um, yeah, sometimes we need that information like along the way to
Mhm.
there's the phrase like we can't appreciate the light without the dark, or at least like know that it exists and stuff. And I think sometimes we're a certain way and we're like, well, if this was just different, I'd feel better or I'd
Right.
care for myself. And it's like, okay, well, boom, you have the difference. Now what? And then you're like, nope. that wasn't it. And you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
you got to focus on something else.
Yeah. It's never, well, I don't want to say never, but it's usually not about our what our body looks like, and it's usually not about the food, and it's usually not about the exercise. It's usually about what is going on in here and in here.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people, with good intentions thinking I'm going to go on this health journey when really their only intention and focus, whether consciously or not, is to shrink themselves as tiny as possible and to focus on. I'm very big on like put your scale away for months when you start your health journey, because that is one piece of information that is the least important.
Hmm.
And people be like, "Well, I felt so great when I was this way." Okay, what were you doing? So anyway, I don't remember where I was going with that thought, but yeah, it's typically usually what's going on in here.
Mm.
Um,
With your clients, what do you find frequently is like the thing that helps them shift the most?
it really depends on who's in front of me, I have one client who, after lots of um, conversations with her, we discovered that the eating the thing that makes her feel guilty, it's the guilt that she's comfortable with, and so she's unconsciously seeking the guilt and therefore eating the thing that makes her feel guilty. Does that make sense? So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
takes a lot of digging. Um, but that's you know what we do is we're just curious and we ask curious questions, because 9 times out of 10 the clients in front of us, they have the answer inside of them. They just need us to help, like, you know get it out of you by asking questions. And it was
yeah,
such an interesting thing. Like, the guilt is the comfort, and therefore she's going to keep binging so that she can feel guilty, so that she can feel comfortable. I was like, wow, this is insane. So I would say that's probably one of the biggest things, but it really does depend on who's in front of me and what their background is and what the messages they've gotten from diet culture and parents and everyone in their world.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, like people's different payoffs. Uh,
Mhm.
I don't know if I'd heard that one before, like, like being so comfortable with the guilt, but I can definitely see
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to respect your time, but I do have one last question for you.
Mm.
And I ask everyone at the end of every episode, and that is, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
But I think maybe I need to come up with a second one because the
Okay.
first one I feel like I've divulged already, which is love yourself.
Yeah.
And so if it wasn't that, which I think it's a big one, um, I would say whenever you get triggered, to shift yourself out of it, just shift to curiosity. And and I would say that you remain in the question. And curiosity came up earlier, but I said when you make a conclusion, you really shut off your capacity to shift things or like to move through a space or get to a new destination. And so if you remain curious, it's a good way, I think, of just emotionally regulating yourself. But it's also a good way to like create a shift in your life. And I would say the quality of anyone's life, it's determined by the quality of their questions. And so the better you get at asking questions, asking more detailed questions, like the better help you're able to give yourself. It's interesting, AI has come out, and I guess that maybe we can say it's not so recent now, but they have this new position called a prompt engineer. And a prompt engineer is someone who knows how to ask a really good question of the AI. And so they formulate it in a way that it's detailed and specific enough that the information can be divulged. And I chuckle at the prompt engineer. And I said, well, that's like life itself. Like, the better question that you're able to ask yourself, the better answer you're going to give yourself. And that better information can really create some like huge shifts, because there's a direct parallel. the AI in the background, there's these large language models and access to the infinite knowledge of mankind. And it's in similar ways, like we have a tremendous amount of access to information if we just ask, and we can ask ourselves that. So I would say to the world, remain curious, ask incredibly excellent questions of yourself.
Boom. Beautiful beasts. Dominic signing off. Until next time. Palaka.